I'll start off by saying that outside fires are the leading cause of fires today. It has surpassed all other fire types.
Is that new?
Yes. Yeah, in the last 16 months or thereabouts. We have 400 working structure fires a year. That's more than one a day. But every single day we go on many more outside fires all around the year. So it's using up a lot of time. And the firefighters, they know that this is not the highest use of their training and education and experience.
Welcome to the East Anchorage Book Club. I'm your host, Andrew Gray. The purpose of this podcast is to tell the stories of Alaskans of interest and importance. Today, our guest is the chief of the Anchorage Fire Department, Doug Schrage. After a childhood in Anchorage, Chief Schrage went to the University of Alaska Fairbanks, where he thought he was beginning his path to becoming a dentist. After a friend persuaded him to become a student firefighter, though, he quickly realized that being a firefighter was his calling. This year marks 40 years since he first joined the Anchorage Fire Department. He was initially appointed chief in 2021 by Anchorage Mayor-elect at the time, Dave Bronson. He was reappointed last year by current Anchorage Mayor Suzanne LaFrance. Chief Doug Schrage, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you.
Tell us a little bit about your early life. Where did you grow up?
I grew up here in Anchorage. My family moved here in 1969. I was 6 years old, and my dad was a school teacher. And at that time, Anchorage had been recruiting school teachers from around the country. So he answered the call and relocated the entire family to Anchorage.
Do you remember the move?
I do. Yep. We drove up in our camper, came up to Alcan. I don't remember much in the way of details. I do remember picking up hitchhikers.
Really?
Because it's something that you could do then and was quite common.
Were there hitchhikers on the Alcan?
I couldn't say where it was, but yes, I think.
And where did you start? Where were you guys moving from?
We came from the Denver area, Littleton to be precise. We lived in a suburb of Denver. I think my mom was a ski instructor at one of the ski resorts there in the mountains.
And so you got to Alaska, your dad was a teacher. Was your mom working?
My mom was a nurse by trade, an RN, but I don't think she became a nurse until after. I remember her going to college at Anchorage Community College. So no, she wasn't working.
What part of town did you live in? What schools did you go to?
Yeah. So I remember the first house we moved into, I presume it was a rental, but it was a tiny little house in Nunaka Valley. I remember there was aluminum foil on the window, so we were unaccustomed to the long daylight. I do remember that it was a very long walk to Airport Heights Elementary School. My first year was to Airport Heights. Then sometime during that year, we moved to Zodiac Manor. So that's off of Abbott Road near where Elmore comes through now. And so we lived over there, and then at that time relocated. I started going to school at Abbott Loop Elementary. I finished elementary school there. At that time, Henshu School had not been built, so I attended Service Henshu. So both Service and Henshu were occupying the same building that we now know as Service High School.
Interesting.
So I went to 7th and 8th grade there. During the summer before my 9th grade, the family relocated to Wasilla. So I went to all 4 years of high school at Wasilla High School.
Oh, so you graduated from Wasilla High School?
I did, yeah.
Oh, that is a surprise. I did not know that.
Yeah, me and Sarah Palin.
Really? Were you all in the same years?
She was 1 year younger than me.
Okay.
Her older sister, Heather, was my age. The cohort of students that I graduated from high school with in Wasilla, I was an outsider to them because many of them had gone to grade school together in junior high school, and now they're in high school. And I was an outsider, and I think still am to that cohort. But
so you don't feel a part of the Wasilla High School graduating class of whatever year it was?
81.
81.
Well, I was the president of my graduating class.
Well, then they elected you.
I was the homecoming king.
Okay, well, then I would say that you
I
weren't that much of an outsider.
No, at first, yeah. But I don't have many enduring deep friendships with the people I graduated from high school with compared to what I have here in town. Yeah, I mean, I fully enjoyed all the richness of the experience of being a Wasilla warrior. And I still have my Letterman jacket and all that. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But most of my friends, there's some exceptions, but most of my friends are people that I grew up with in Anchorage.
What happened after Wasilla?
Well, I went to college. I went to UAF because that's what you did. You either went to work or you went to college, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I went to college. I was taking pre-med classes. I had an interest in dentistry. One of my friends from high school was a volunteer firefighter in the Valley all the years that we were in high school together. And he got into the student fire program up there at UAF, and he encouraged me to join too. I had no interest whatsoever. No real knowledge either of what fire departments were about or anything. But he said, yeah, it's great. You get a place to live. You don't have to pay for your dorm. You buy your groceries, feed yourself in the station, and you get paid. And so I signed up. I got in, and it was just a matter of weeks before I decided this was what I was going to do for the rest of my career.
Do you remember anything specific in those weeks that kind of flipped that switch in your head that said, hey, this is something I really like and want to do?
I think I was attracted to the structure and the camaraderie. So the structure of having known boundaries. There was a hierarchy of leadership. You knew who was in charge. You trusted the leadership. The people above you trained you. I enjoyed learning. At the same time, I was given lots of independence and the ability to seek training on my own and explore my own path. And then just being in community with the other student firefighters there day and night, meals together, recreating together, going to the student pub together, sleeping in the dormitory, and then, of course, learning to go on emergency calls. Those are what did it for me.
And were there any big emergency calls when you were a student firefighter?
Yeah, there were. The student fire program at Fairbanks is very, very unique from any other in the United States. There's other college student programs around. It is the only one that predates the Fair Labor Standards Act, which meant that as student firefighters, we could be paid to work the full firefighter schedule, 56 hours a week. Today, a student employee cannot work that many, can't work more than 20 hours a week. UAF has an exception to that. And so it enabled us to work a regular schedule. We got paid around the clock. And the student fire department there had responsibility for responding to emergencies off the campus and in the surrounding communities. So yeah, it was pretty good.
I assume, that fires don't follow what's the best schedule for a student. So I assume that you had to go out on some calls and were out all night and then had school the next day, had class.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's the same way today.
Yeah. So it's hard, and it's not necessarily the best sleep schedule for a student.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's not a good sleep schedule for anybody for that matter, but yes, particularly challenging. So two things on that front. One is the fire department was very accommodating of the students. That was the mission. And so if you had an exam or you had a class to get to, you could easily sign out. We had enough people working there that they could do without a handful of employees at any given time so that they could attend to their classes. It's still the same way today. Mm-hmm. The other side of that is that the faculty at UAF is and was very accommodating. So if they knew who the student firefighters were, they remain in constant contact with the department leadership. If there was a big overnight event, they might allow you some grace in taking an exam.
Then on the other hand, if what you want to do with your life is be a firefighter, who cares about your classes?
A lot of people do, actually. When I got hired here at the Anchorage Fire Department, that was in 1985. And I remember one of the department leaders saying something to the effect that all you have to do to be a good fireman here, that's what we called them then. Today it's firefighters. But all you have to do to be a good fireman is you have to have a size 13 boot and a size 3 hat. The point being, it was brawn over brains. It's not that way. The people that rise up to leadership positions, such as me, I manage a $100+ million budget each year. And it's not enough these days to install people into those positions without a college education. And it's true through all the ranks. So we hire and reward people in the Anchorage Fire Department. It was the same in Fairbanks. Education is very much a part of the mission of it at the Student Fire Department at UAF. And here in Anchorage, we tend to hire a lot of people with degrees, some with graduate degrees. This last group, we hired an attorney and somebody in the medical profession, all manner. We also pay pro pay or incentive pay for people that have a degree. We pay 4% for someone with an associate degree and 8% for somebody with a bachelor's degree. For those that are pursuing higher education, we pay tuition and books so that people can advance their knowledge because it makes us a better organization.
What did your parents think about you becoming a firefighter?
They hated it. Yeah.
What did your dad teach?
He taught grade school.
Okay.
So he taught Title I schools. He started off at Denali Elementary right downtown. And then he relocated out to Birchwood Elementary and taught math.
Okay.
Really.
Gotcha.
Yeah. His original training was as a PE teacher. So he was a physical education trainer. Yeah.
And they were not happy about you. Neither your mom or your dad were happy about you becoming a firefighter. What were their concerns?
I just think they had higher professional expectations. I still hear about it every now and then at Christmas or when she's introducing me to someone new. Well, he was going to be a dentist, but, now look at him.
So there are firefighters in my family. My dad, he was very dismissive of the firefighters in my family. And he definitely embraced that old school stereotype that they were pyromaniac and arsonists who are obsessed with fire. And he said that to his kids. And that's what I thought of those second and third cousins, that they were obsessed with fire and kind of a little bit crazy. And that was a stereotype that my dad definitely foisted upon me.
Yeah.
But I mean, is there any of that? Like, did you know, was there folks who were obsessed with fire?
There is a phenomenon where firefighters throughout history have been convicted of arson. So sure, that exists. That doesn't really happen much in the modern, enlightened, progressive fire departments, such as the Anchorage Fire Department. I think we're far more professional than many places around the country, and certainly far more professional than maybe we once were generally.
How did you end up in Anchorage? So you did your student firefighting in Fairbanks.
Yep.
And then did you purposely come home?
Yeah, I very much wanted to come back. So I considered myself an Anchorageite the whole time,
even when you were in Wasilla.
Even when I was in Wasilla. So yeah, my plan was to come back to graduate from college, come back to Anchorage. Only now I had more of a sense of mission and purpose, which was everybody's nirvana, which was to get hired by the Anchorage Fire Department. It was the varsity team of fire departments in the state.
And was it hard to do as a new firefighter for you? I mean, for you?
The competition was fierce. You fill out an application, you send it in, and then you get invited to take the written test, which I took the test in 1984. It was in the Egan Center, down in the basement, 1,200 people testing.
For how many spots?
I hired 11 or 12 in my class.
Holy cow.
Yeah. It was for a 2-year list. So they hired off that same list for 2 years. So very intimidating. Like there were people that, including friends of mine, who walked in there and saw all these people and just said, gave up. Why am I going to bother doing this? But I did it. I took the written test. I scored well enough to get invited to the oral boards. And so
What are the types of questions?
So that is a basic aptitude test. So general knowledge questions.
It's not specifically about firefighting.
No.
Got it.
No. Some of the questions were put into a firefighting context. Like, spatial orientation questions. There would be like a little sketch of a map on the page, and they would say, the question would be, there's an emergency up here, and you have all these one-way streets, and there's a road that's being worked on over here, and you have to find the best route to it. Yeah. Just to see if people had the capacity to sort through all those details and figure out how to get from one side to the other.
So like problem solving.
Problem solving. The situational questions is more in the oral boards. Yeah, you'd see a cluster of gears, and if one gear is turning counterclockwise, which way is the one over here on the other side turning? And you had to sort of figure that out. You'd see a stack of blocks, and you could only see it in two-dimensional form, and you'd have to say how many blocks are in this stack by estimating, what could not be seen. The oral board questions were largely situational questions. I remember one question distinctly. You walk into the fire station for your shift change, and you see somebody taking a drink out of a bottle that looked in their locker and kind of hiding it away when they see you coming. What will you do? And so you had to sort of work through that question at the oral board and explain what I would do.
And when I think about if I were in your shoes and I were in the oral board, I would think there's what I would really do, and there's what I think that they want me to say right now. And those might not necessarily be the same thing.
100%. Yeah. We still ask versions of that same question today. And you're exactly right. We know what the ideal answer is, but we stress what we want to know is, what would you really do? And talk us through it.
It matters if you know this person, if this is like your best friend. That's different than if it's like the new guy who just started that you don't really know. You know what I mean? Like you might handle it differently. Like the new guy that you've never met before, you might like go tell your superior, like, I don't know, I think this guy's drinking on the job.
Yeah.
But then if it's like your best friend, you're like, I'm not going to like throw him under the bus.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. The answer that you expect, and that we get a lot is, well, I would go straight to the captain and I would explain that, this is a threat to our own life safety and on and on and on. So, but in reality, you're exactly right. We just want them to talk through it. Tell us what your logic is. Explain why you would do what you would do.
Mm-hmm. So I assume you got it. Like you were one of the 11 out of the 1,200.
I got hired right away. Yep. I was one of the very first ones. I don't know if this made any difference or not, but after coming home from the oral board, I typed a letter to the fire chief. Ross Fosberg was his name. A letter that you would send with your resume.
Right. Explaining why you want the job, why you're a good choice.
Yep. Yeah. And I'll serve you with many years. And I sent it in, and I don't have any idea if that made any difference or not, or if anybody even ever saw it. But I got the call that I was hired. And so my first day on the job was March 18th, 1985.
Wow, so 40 years this past March.
Yes.
So you kept your word in that letter.
I did, yeah.
So there's 1,200 people who applied for that job, and only 11 got hired. I assumed that they could go work somewhere else in the state. There were other places that were easier to get a job, and that maybe you would need to like go work somewhere else and then come back to Anchorage with some experience, and then it would be a little bit easier. Is that how that would work?
Not so much at the time, but certainly people could do that. So it's very different today from 40 years ago. Back then, there were very few people working in the Anchorage Fire Department who were there because they wanted to be firefighters. Many of the people that I worked with when I got hired were people that had come to Alaska to work on the slope or the pipeline. The pipeline had been completed, and now all these workers were looking for jobs. The city was flush with money. The fire department was growing. The city hired many of those people.
So it was 1,200 people looking for a job, not 1,200 people looking to be firefighters.
Yeah. Yeah. When I got hired, I had a little tattoo on my arm I still do, of the fire department emblem. And when people saw that, they were like, what, is this a hobby of yours? Or, well, for them, it's a job. Not everybody. There were exceptions. But by and large, the vast majority of the people that I served with didn't come to work for the fire department because they had a passion or interest in firefighting. It was just a job. I wasn't married at the time when I got hired. And I lived and breathed the fire department.
Yeah.
It's really, it was the fire department became my identity. Like it was my purpose. So I was hired in 85. In 1989, when the housing market crashed, there were layoffs. 24 people from the fire department were laid off, including me.
Oh, you got laid off in 89.
Yep. I had been on the job 4 years. I got laid off. And it was soul crushing because now I had, like I said, I had no purpose. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I got hired when I was 21, so I was 25.
Yep.
It was really tough. I ultimately got hired back, through attrition, as people read.
But how long did it take?
About 4 months, so not terribly long.
So basically, you had a 4-month unexpected unpaid furlough.
Yep, that's what it turned out to be. So during that time, I applied for other fire departments around the country, and I applied in Portland, Oregon, and San Francisco, and Salt Lake City, just seeing what might open up.
And did you get any calls?
No. For most places, it's a lengthy process. So you sign up, get your name on a list, and then when they decide to offer the written test, it could be 1 to 2 years out, they'll send you a letter. And so it wasn't like we're advertising for openings right now and come apply. That's not the way it really was. It's more so that way now. So I don't want to let the thought that yesterday's firefighters were not
As dedicated or as interested as
the people I worked with were very good firefighters, but they didn't come to the job with that thinking, oh, I've always wanted to be a firefighter. Today, it's very competitive from within the firefighting community. So we're hiring firefighters right now. They're going through the physical ability test as we speak. And many of the people that we're testing are firefighters from other parts of the country and other parts of the state. So this is a good place to work. People know it, and they want to come and be a part of our organization.
Where did you settle when you came back to Anchorage from Fairbanks? And like a logistics question, do you find out what station you're going to be at and then decide where you're going to live?
So when you come to work, you are sent to the academy. It's performed locally, but today it's about 6 months, 5 months. Back then it was probably 3 months, but it's 6 days a week at our training center. And so I was renting a room from a family friend at that time. At the end of the academy, we still do this today. You get your orders, which tell you which station to report to and which platoon. I was told to report to Station 12, which is 80th and Homer Drive. So basically, it's a diamond interchange. So I had a few days. I started looking around for apartments around that vicinity. And it's a good thing I didn't find one, because when I showed up at Station 12, I was reassigned by the battalion chief to Station 5 in Spenard. So my first day on the job was in Spenard, Station 5. And that's where I worked until I got laid off.
So did you live in Spenard?
No, I bought a house in Abeloop area, which I have since sold to my son, where he now lives with his wife and our granddaughters.
Oh, well, then I've been in that house.
And our sons went to the same grade school I went to. Very cool. Very nostalgic.
I kind of wondered about that, but I guess the thing is like, unless you're being assigned to a station in Girdwood or a station in Chugiak, Anchorage is not that big, really. I mean, You can drive 20 minutes to another station.
Yeah, exactly.
Across town. It's not that big of a deal. Do people get attached to their station? Like, is there station identity? And like, is there...
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some firefighters never move up the ranks. They just...
Because they'd rather just stay at their
They just
station.
want to be a firefighter. They stay at the same station for a long time. Firefighters can also bid to other stations. They're awarded on seniority as openings occur. And then, of course, when you move up through the ranks, you generally don't get to lead the crew that you came from. So you get reassigned to a different station and a different shift often. So it would be shameful to end up buying a house and then be relocated on the other end of town.
What is the quality that makes a good firefighter, in your opinion? Like, what's the most important thing?
The things that we look for in the chief's interview. So right now we're going through the hiring process. we're going to hire 24 people in January. And the ones who pass all the tests, the written test, the work styles inventory, the oral board, they make it to at the physical ability test. All those people come to the chief's interview. What I'm looking for in the chief's interview is character, the ability to learn, and the ability to get along. That's what it takes. Somebody with the right character, a willingness to learn, humility, and able to get along, somebody with a sense of humor, we can teach them anything they need to know. You can't always teach character.
Are there people out there who can ace those interviews and it's not real? Or do you feel like you're able to see the true character?
You can fake it. Yes. There are people that get through and they turn out to be not who we were expecting. Yes. Not many, but there are some. But our system has a way of rooting those people out, and many times they aren't successful. So the 5-month or so academy that we put them through is very close quarters for hours a day, every day of the week. And any character faults will be exposed. And we have one opportunity to let those people go before they get assigned to the station and then eventually pass their probation. Once they pass their probation, they have protections on their job. But up until then, we can let people go for any cause or no cause.
How often does it happen that people don't make it through the 5 months?
We lose, on average, about 10% each year. So we're going to hire 24. We're actually going to overhire. So we usually overhire by a couple of people because we know that some will wash out. So we're going to hire 26 people or thereabouts, and with the expectation that 24 will pass the academy.
Interesting. Do you have any particularly memorable fires from your first couple of decades?
Yes, many, for different reasons. I've never had one of those heroic go into a building that's on fire, identify
Carry the baby out of
the baby out.
Yeah.
I've never had that experience. There are people I work with who have, but I haven't had one of those, really profound heroic episodes. But I've had lots of big fires and lots of scary fires. The biggest fire that I ever was involved with was the 1200 I Street fire in 2009, right up here at I Street and 12th Avenue, the condominiums. And it was a very windy day and burned the roof off 2 of the buildings there. Most of the fires where people get injured or die are usually in small residences. And those are the ones that are memorable. A couple that come to mind are ones where the first engine to arrive is often alone for some period of time until the next neighboring engine comes from another station. So the engines, when I got hired, had 500 gallons of water on them. Today we carry 1,000. So back then you had to be much more efficient with your water because you had to wait for the second engine to come and hook to a hydrant for you. Or in some cases we would connect to our own hydrant, which would delay the firefight, but it would
make sure you don't run out of water.
Yeah. So it's a decision that has to be made on the fly in the moment by the officer. But I remember I was on Engine 5 in Chugach Manor, trailer park. We got there. The truck was elsewhere on a different call or something. So we were by ourselves for, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 minutes. And we effectively went in, put the fire out, helped the occupants more or less before anybody else arrived. And it was a bad fire. And so the same thing happens today.
And I guess I'd like to talk a little bit about your journey towards becoming chief. And is that something that you'd always thought might happen, or did you think about it at all?
No. So I moved up the ranks pretty quickly. And I think that was because of my competitive nature. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So those are qualities that served me well in my career. So I tested well, studied hard. I moved up the ranks almost as quickly as you can. And when I was a senior fire captain, we did annual performance evaluations. The officer wrote in my evaluation that I would be the fire chief someday.
What year was that?
1992-ish.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
a long time ago.
A long time ago. So I had never viewed myself in that role. I wanted to compete and move up, but also there was an element of me in which I felt like I could do the job of my superior better than he or she could.
I'm sure you had some. In 40 years, I'm sure you had people in charge of you who you could have done a better job than. What are some examples of bad leadership that you've seen?
There's lots. You learn something from everybody. You learn from good bosses and bad bosses, just equally. The best people that I worked for, and there were many more really good officers than poor ones, but the best ones, they took a real interest in the individuals and their needs and their wellness and made sure they were functioning and their home life was good. Like really.
They saw their subordinates as people.
Yeah, that's right. That's a great way of putting it. There were others who were driven by their own ego, and it showed in everything that they did. Long time ago. This does not describe today's fire department, but we had firefighters that were wife swapping with one another. We had firefighters getting arrested for shoplifting on duty. We had, when I was the deputy chief, the cable company called us up and said, yeah, you should take an interest in what your firefighters are watching on cable over at such and such station. And there was a lot of bad behavior that went on then. And there may be some things that go on today, but certainly not to the same extent. And it's all a function of leadership. And that speaks more to their character and ethics. But there are also people who weren't good firefighters. Like at Station 5 during my first year, the other shift, I was not on duty at the time. There was a fire that broke out just a couple of blocks away from the station on Iowa Street, and it was a big fire. And the first engine pulled right in front of the house, too close, the building, too close. The radiant heat was melting the lights and the fixtures on the side of the fire engine. The first line they pulled off of the truck was to protect the fire truck. Bad decisions. There were fatalities in that fire, and there were also some rescues that had been made, but it was an example of poor judgment and erroneous decision. It was common in the early days of the fire department that when we hired a new firefighter, we would put them through 3 months of training, and then they were blessed as a firefighter. And then any other training that they got after that, they had to get on their own. So if you wanted to be an engineer or a captain or a battalion chief, you pursued it on your own.
Took time off work or paid for it yourself, like all that stuff.
Yes, and yes. Those are all the things I did. Yeah. Today, we don't do it that way. Today, we hold academies. So people come in on their own time for weeks at a time to learn engineering, which is a historical term, not like a mechanical engineer or civil engineer, but engineer like the person who operates the fire engine.
Mm-hmm.
So there's quite a bit of knowledge that goes into that. But so now we provide an academy so people can learn it all in a structured setting. We have a Fire Officer 1 and Fire Officer 2 academy where prospective officers can come learn the craft. So we make much better decisions today than back then.
How many total number of firefighters did you have when you started versus how many we have now?
There were 206 members of the fire department when I got hired, and today there are 430.
So more than double.
Yeah.
One more question about leadership. It's kind of a notorious story. A couple of fire chiefs ago, sending a fire truck to pick up his daughter from school. You were a deputy chief then. And I'm just curious about what it's like for a high-up administrator when the administrator above you does something that's very embarrassing, and how do you handle that?
Ooh, there's a lot to unpack there. Yeah, thanks for the question. In no particular order. I'm a political appointee. I was hired here in 2021 by Mayor-elect Bronson. Backing up, the chief that you described that had some indiscretions was one of my subordinates. And he curried political favor with one of the mayoral candidates who ultimately became the mayor. And the mayor then made my subordinate my boss. And it was a position that, in that time during my career, I had aspired to and worked very hard to prepare for. Then they figured out that he had a relative in the department. And so, because of the nepotism law at the time, the incumbent employee either had to resign or my subordinate could not be the chief. So I was made the acting chief while they sorted this out. And what happened was the assembly rewrote the ordinance to accommodate the director having a relative in the organization. So my acting came to an end at that time. I lasted about a year, and almost exactly a year. And that's when I left the department and I went back to the fire department in Fairbanks at UAF where I started. And so for 10 years, I was the chief at the UAF Fire Department.
What years was that?
2010 to 2021.
Wow. So you were in Fairbanks until you took the chief job here.
Yep. I retired from here in 2010 after 25 years. And went to Fairbanks. I chiefed the UAF Student Fire Department where my career started. And then in 2021, Mayor-elect Bronson hired me back. In the intervening years, I applied 3 times to come back and be the chief. And I was passed over all 3 times because by this time I was viewed as an outsider.
Well, I'm curious because, you talked about your previous subordinate who then got made your superior through currying political favor. Did you learn from that you had to do that to get this job, that you needed to be greasing the wheels with people who were going to become mayor?
Yeah. In fact, that's, I think, in part why I wasn't successful getting hired back here. So after being rejected the 3rd time, I hired a career coach, somebody who helped me better prepare. And I consulted knowledgeable people in the political world around here, including some lobbyists, well-known lobbyists that you and I both know. And the advice it gave me was, you have to curry favor with the potential people, and you have to hitch your wagon to one of the horses. And at that time, as you remember, Mayor Bronson was running. There were, I think, 13 candidates.
There were. I mean, I remember that race very well. And I wouldn't have suspected that was the horse that anyone should hook their wagon to.
Yeah. Well, everybody thought it was going to be Croft or
Bill Falsey.
Yeah.
Forrest Dunbar. And then on the other side of the aisle, Robbins. Mike Robbins.
Mike
Robbins, who people who'd watched politics for a while would have thought that he would have done better than Bronson. But there were a lot.
Yeah. So I was counseled by a pretty well-known lobbyist, and he said, you got to pick one and give him money. And that's how it goes.
And you picked Bronson.
I didn't.
You didn't?
I went against his advice. It didn't feel right to me. And I said, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to be completely neutral. I'm not going to give any money to anybody. And my strategy paid off. By the time that the election occurred and it was down to Forrest Dunbar and
Dave Bronson
in the runoff, Dunbar was the favored winner. Mm-hmm. Even then, I stuck to my strategy. I decided just to be neutral. I was in it to be the best fire chief candidate I could be and not a political appointee. And obviously Dave Bronson won the election. And I can't remember.
Well, the previous chief was the first female chief.
Yeah.
And so, as when any new mayor comes in, it's like, well, is the mayor going to keep the leadership or change the leadership? And I mean, he didn't keep the leadership.
Yeah, well, she was going to retire at that time anyway.
Got it.
Yeah, she had announced her retirement 6 months in advance. She was going to retire at the end of Berkowitz's term.
Gotcha.
So he was looking for a fire chief from the beginning. So one of our fire officers who worked a good portion of my career with, and we stayed in touch even while I was in Fairbanks, is the husband to the city manager that Dave Bronson appointed, Amy Domboski. And so
that was your end.
She recommended my name to Mr. Bronson, Mayor-elect Bronson, and he ultimately appointed me. And so after having been passed over 3 times, he was the one who gave me my shot. And I took it. And of Mayor Bronson's appointees, not the incumbents, but for those who he brought
You started. Yeah. You started with him. Yeah.
I was the only one that went the entire 3 years.
Wow. And you're still there.
And then I was reappointed by Mayor LaFrance. And I'm grateful to her as well.
What's been the best part of being chief? What's been the worst part?
It's hard to think of some worst parts. I love my job. My wife and I agreed very early on, about the time I was thinking about pursuing the fire chief opportunity. We agreed that I wouldn't accept such a political appointment until I had the time in to retire. Because we didn't want for me to be beholden, to have the job and to allow that to compromise my principles. And that's advice that I would share with anybody. So right now I'm preparing my successors, and that's advice that I'm providing to them as well. I've watched other predecessors of mine, not the immediate predecessors, but earlier on, I have watched them compromise their own principles in order just to remain employed long enough to get their retirement. The point is, I don't need the job. I'm here because I want to be here, and I love my work. I look forward to going to work most days. There are days that are hard.
I guess maybe not like what's the worst part. What's the hardest part of being the chief?
The hardest part is finding the path. Anchorage, just like every city of our size, is a bureaucracy. And trying to get anything meaningful done through the bureaucracy, especially during a time when the city has been so short-staffed for a few years, is really difficult to get things done. And so you have to leverage personal relationships, connections, expertise, public standing. You have to get to know legislators. That's how you get things done. Most decisions aren't made on the merits alone. Like, I've got lots of good ideas, but I can't just go to the mayor or the assembly and say, here's what we should do to solve this problem. It'll just be viewed as my initiative. You got to build a base of support. You got to connect dots. You got to get people to advocate for you. That's the hardest part.
So I went to Station 14 because I had a big fire in my backyard. I was actually in Fairbanks at the time of the fire. So it was my family. My 12-year-old had to throw the cats in a carrier, and they had to drive out because we had a few homeless camps in the greenbelt immediately behind our house. Propane tank exploded, 40-foot high flames, and Station 14, they responded and they put the fire out. So I went and met with them to thank them, but also got to have a conversation with them about the types of issues that they're having nowadays that a legislator should know about. Mm-hmm. And what they conveyed to me is that the most practical advice, they said they wish that the no campfires ordinance for people who are camping in the greenbelt was being enforced, because even if it's like a small controlled fire, the point is that it's against the law now. Like, you're not allowed to create your own little campfire at your tent in a random spot in the greenbelt. Yeah. And the way it was conveyed is right now it's kind of rainy, and they're not going to start a huge forest fire. But if we don't enforce it now, June, no rain, super dry, windy, they're still doing it. And you can't go back in time and give the ticket or the citation for what they were doing after the fires burned down homes. And they want that enforced. Yeah,
for sure. I'll start off by saying that outside fires are leading cause of fires today. It has surpassed all other fire types.
Is that new?
Yes. Yeah, in the last 16 months or thereabouts. We have 400 working structure fires a year. That's more than one a day. But every single day we go on many more outside fires all around the year. So it's using up a lot of time. And the firefighters, they know that this is not the highest use of their training and education and experience.
And they spoke about, speaking of the time waste of, when it's not at an address, they're having to find it. Like what trail do they walk down? How long does this hose need to be? Like these sorts of logistical questions that aren't the typical type of
Yeah.
question or problem they're having to solve.
Yeah. In the fire department, I have extended discretion to the fire officers to evaluate the overall risk, the totality of the risk for any given outdoor fire. In the winter time, people ask them to consider, okay, what is the risk of this person freezing to death versus burning their tent down and getting gravely injured? And so I've afforded them the discretion to make a decision about whether to extinguish that fire, require the fire to be extinguished. Because if the firefighters complain about going on the fires for good reason, but they also, I don't want to unfairly put them in the position of saying, I'm sorry, you're going to freeze to death. You're trying to heat up your can of beans, but we have to put this fire out. That's one aspect of it. That's the humanitarian side of it. The other is we have no enforcement power outside of the plan review and code enforcement process for new construction and existing construction. The fire department has no enforcement power. So we have no ability to write a citation. We rely on the police department to do that. And the police department does do that. They do respond. They don't always respond in the time frame that is desirable to us, but it's the same as traffic collisions or minor thefts that go on every day around the city. The police department's making choices about where to deploy their available staff, and they are oftentimes going to go to the crime in process versus the theft that already occurred or the campfire that is low risk or whatever it is.
Right. I'm interviewing Chief Case next week.
Oh, good.
So I'll be talking to APD.
You can tell them that I was charitable about it.
Yeah, well, and I could see how a police officer doesn't think that their job is to walk around the woods and give tickets for people who have a small fire burning.
Yep.
Like, that doesn't really seem like what they signed up for. That doesn't feel like you're fighting crime.
Yeah. So it's very complex. I tend to think that the solutions to the root of the problem lie in solving the problems that's driving people into homelessness in the first place. And I think the mayor is making progress on that. It may not be evident to some taxpayers or some homeowners, but from where I sit, I can see the progress is being made. More people are moving into housing, more people are accessing treatment. The fire department, we've doubled our mobile crisis team. We're working on a program to stand up medically assisted therapy where we can actually provide medication that will take away people's cravings for alcohol and narcotics and other substances. I think we're on a good path. There are always going to be people that simply don't want to participate in society. And hopefully we'll get to a point where those are the ones who will be cited, arrested, and dealt with in that way.
One quick follow-up question on the medically assisted therapy. I was not aware of that. What's the vision for that program? Who will be administering the medically assisted therapy to lower cravings?
We don't know specifically. Right now it's very conceptual, but it will be somebody in our mobile integrated health program, which is where the mobile crisis team resides. It's where our core team resides. We're looking closely at what the Seattle Fire Department is doing. They have what they call the PORT team, post-overdose response team. And it's a clinician and I don't know if it's a nurse practitioner or a PA, but it's a trained medical practitioner.
A prescriber.
A prescriber. They can respond and provide counseling, find out if somebody wants help with their addiction, and they provide the medication and then provide them a pathway into treatment. It's expensive to do, but what we've learned with our mobile crisis team is 1 for 1. Every call that our mobile crisis team goes on, statistically speaking, is a call we don't have to send an ambulance crew to inappropriately. We respond dozens, perhaps hundreds of times each day to patients that don't need medical treatment, but there's no other resource to send. And so it's cheaper to stand up a team like that to provide focused, appropriate treatment and thereby free up our ambulances. Compared to other cities of our size and larger cities, we have more ambulances on the road relative to the number of fire trucks than any other fire department that I can think of. And it's because Our community is so reliant on 911 as their primary health care. They don't know what else to do, or they have no insurance. They can't afford to go see a doctor. 911, fire department sends an ambulance. We take them to the hospital.
I hear you saying that we might have more ambulances here than any other city in terms of this size. But as someone who worked in emergency departments in California, this is not just an Anchorage problem in terms of inappropriate calls to 911 and people taking ambulances to the ER. I had a woman, I will never forget it, who was working in her yard and an unknown insect stung her arm, and she called 911, and she was the patient that I had to see in like bed 5, and I went in, and I mean, it looked like a mosquito bite, and I had to just like reassure her that sometimes a bug bites you and it'll swell up a little bit, but it'll probably go away tomorrow. I mean, it was just insane to me, the resources that had been used. This happens all over America.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to suggest that this was a problem unique to Anchorage. What's unique is that I think the ratio of ambulances to fire trucks is much higher here.
Gotcha.
Yeah, certainly.
I did an APD ride-along about a year ago, and I would say 40% of, getting out of the car and checking things out was the body at bus stop. Make sure they're breathing, like that. Like we did those stops, like, oh, this doesn't look good. Stop, pull over, be like, oh no, she's fine. She's just had a little too much. And I assume that's a lot of the calls that, their ambulances are going out on.
Yeah. In our case, though, we don't have the ability to just leave somebody there. Our system doesn't provide for provider-initiated refusals. In other words,
if 911's called, the ambulance is dispatched.
Yep.
The person is going in.
Yeah. We cannot say, you don't need an ambulance, because of our structure and the liability and our medical direction and so forth is such that it's a risk that to date we've been unwilling to take. I think we're trending towards that just because there is a lot of system abuse, a lot of 911 abuse. So I think we will reach a point where the providers can say, you don't need an ambulance.
And this is, I guess, important information to give to the public. 311, is that the correct call, like for a safety check? Like, let's say that you're concerned about someone at the bus stop they look like they're sleeping. The person's like, I don't know, maybe they're dead. Should they call 311 or should they call 911?
Are they in their car?
I guess probably they're in their car. They're driving by.
That's a judgment call. The safer thing to do is to call 911. If you believe somebody's having a medical emergency, they should dial 911. Now, I started in the fire department before cell phones were even a thing, and certainly before they were commonplace. Mm-hmm. And when cell phones became prevalent, the number of 911 calls shot through the roof, because it now was easy for somebody driving by to say, yeah, I'm in my car and there's somebody laying in the grass. Did you stop? No.
Well, then what is 311 for?
311 is for when you can see that they're sitting up or you approach the person and it appears they're not having a medical emergency, but they might need ASP to take them to the safety center or the mobile crisis team or the HOPE team at the police department, other services.
So like wandering through traffic, like not seeming like they understand what's happening, maybe? Is that?
I would characterize that as a behavioral crisis. Like if they're endangering themselves, that's still a 911 call. But if somebody's standing on the corner, like I sometimes see from my office, screaming at the sky, that would be a 311 call. But if they're stepping into traffic, that's 911.
Well, that's helpful. I was trying to give people an option other than 911, but it is an option. 311 is an option. And I guess let's say that somebody makes a mistake. Mm-hmm. They think, oh, this is 311 when it should have been 911. Do the folks who respond for 311, like, can they take it up a level?
It's the same people.
It's the same people.
Yeah. When you dial 311 or 911, the phone will be answered by the same group of call takers at the police department.
Got it.
The only difference is if they have a bunch of calls in queue, like calls are coming in, they're going to answer the 911 calls first.
Got it. That's very important information.
Yeah, but if they pick up your 311 call right away and through the interrogation or the questioning of the caller, decide that this is a potential real emergency, they're going to dispatch appropriately.
Hey, last question. Something that you just want the Anchorage public to know that feels to you like too many people don't know.
Oh, there's lots
few?
of things. Yeah.
Well, then tell me a few.
I think something that I get questions about at community council meetings sometimes is, why are we sending a fire truck to my medical emergency? And the reason for that is it's a matter of capacity. So every one of our firefighters is also trained to be on the ambulance. Everyone's either an emergency medical technician or a paramedic. Conversely, every EMT or paramedic is also a trained firefighter, and they rotate back and forth. They serve in both capacities throughout their career. So what that means is, if you dial 911 for a medical emergency in your home and the nearest unit is a fire truck, if it's closer than the nearest ambulance, we're going to send the fire truck also, so that we can get that paramedic or EMT to your side.
So it's not because they made a mistake and they think there's a fire. It's just that that's the vehicle that they had available.
Yeah, and we've incurred some criticism, fairly, for sending $1 million, 80,000-pound fire truck to routine medical emergencies. It's a good criticism. And we actually put in a request this year, which ultimately wasn't accepted, but we floated the idea of providing alternate response vehicles, which is smaller, more nimble vehicles that we can use for purposes like that. So for something that we'll look into again over the off season and next year as well.
Any other advice you'd give to the public?
You know what I wish is that we had a 0-foot sprinkler ordinance. In other words, a requirement that all new residential construction have residential fire sprinklers in it. And this has been proven to save lives. Residential fire sprinklers are much different from the sprinklers that we're looking at here. These are commercial building sprinklers designed to protect the building from burning down. A residential fire sprinkler is intended to provide an escape for the residents, because practically all fire fatalities occur in residences and often while people are sleeping. And so residential fire sprinklers are inexpensive to install, usually cheaper than granite countertops, and have been proven in other communities to save lives. But there's great resistance, and it's interpreted to be contrary to efforts to improve the amount of low-cost housing.
Since we're in this big movement of trying to make it easier to build houses, that adding this requirement on would make it more difficult to build housing.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't, because it's cheaper than a granite countertop.
It's cheaper than that. And if our buildings were sprinklered, we would displace a lot fewer people. The 88th Avenue fire just a few days ago displaced 45-some residents. Those are 45 people that are looking for housing.
And it's because they didn't have an adequate sprinkler system? Or?
Well, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I think it's very likely that there was no sprinkler system.
Got it. Well, Chief Doug Schrage, thank you so much for being on the show today. I apologize because I didn't ask about how you met your wife. I didn't ask about your 3 kids. I didn't ask about your youngest son was a firefighter.
Still is.
Still is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I will ask that question. So you talked about that nepotism issue earlier. Is it a nepotism issue to have the chief's son as a firefighter?
Thanks to my former fire chief boss, at that time they had to rewrite the nepotism ordinance, which today enables my son to be working here.
Got it. So a really awkward time in your career, but ultimately the result is helpful to you today.
Rather serendipitous.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, thanks again for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Thank you, listeners. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review us. To contact me, email rep.andrew.gray@akleg.gov or call 907-269-0123.